Yes, very much so, and none more so than here at Oslo Cathedral, where the King and the Prime Minister attended, along with hundreds of other people, and outside a couple of thousand more, all very silent, very intense, and of course very, very emotional, because this has been an attack like no other on this country, and people have just gathered together, hugging, crying. It's been a very, very gut-wrenching spectacle to witness, and of course far more so, no more so than those that have lost family members, and I believe some of those were here today. So it's this has been replicated up and down the country, in every little church, and right down to the biggest church in the land here, as people come together determined that this won't defeat them, but of course still in shock and serious grief, and that will only continue over the next few days as we start to get names and put faces to names, and then start having funerals, and now nearly 100 funerals to come from this apparently one person in what must have been a blind rage that he concocted perhaps many years ago, by the looks of it.
And you mentioned one person there. There have been a number of arrests over the weekend by police investigating this horrendous crime, but they still believe it was the act of this so-called lone wolf.
Yes, they raided an industrial area where they thought that it was possible that the gunman might have prepared the bombs, and they arrested a number of men, about 6 men. Now they've all been released. There's no evidence whatsoever that they're involved in this at all, but it does reflect the level of tension here, and of course the determination that if there are any other people involved here, that they'll be arrested, they'll be taken out. But at this stage, it does look like an extremely intricately planned operation by one man over a number of years. The fact is, it looks as though he's bought a farm for a few years ago, perhaps so he could buy fertiliser, bought 6 tonnes of fertiliser. Now, if he was living in the city, of course, without the farm connection, he couldn't buy that. It would raise suspicions, but not if he's a farmer. He's gone to very, very intricate detail, right down to planning the number of bullets he needs, even the meal that he would eat on the day of the attack. And of course he's put out a manifesto, a 1,500-page manifesto, outlining really what he says is a crusade against Muslims, drive them out of Europe, that Muslims are trying to take over the world, and this is his fight back, and he's fighting back against weak liberal governments, as he sees, and that's the consistency of the targets. Here in the centre of the city, the government building absolutely destroyed, and of course then the youth from the ruling party, the ruling Labour Party, their youth camp on the island, they were targeted, and in his words, I had to remove the government, and I had to remove the next generation of leaders, and in part that is what he's done.
And finally, Phil, the official death toll stands at 93. I believe, though, the search does continue for possible further bodies in the lake near where the scene of that shooting at the youth camp.
Yeah, some of the bodies were removed today from the island, but they do believe that there are maybe 3 or 4 left unaccounted for, most likely shot as they tried to swim away from the island, and their bodies are in the lake somewhere, and perhaps even others that swam out who drowned trying to get away. A lot of people were rescued in boats. We're hearing more and more stories of boat rescues, that people going in, picking people up under fire. Also, even getting onto the boat didn't mean you were safe. And one boat owner described how he had to decide who he could pick up and who he couldn't. He simply couldn't fit that many on the boat, and he was doing repeated trips. And the gut-wrenching reflection now on not those he rescued, of course they would be terribly grateful, he saved their lives, but for those he couldn't save. And so many horrendous stories. Another one just that I heard just recently, a young kid, 19 years old, he'd just come from Afghanistan 2 years ago to escape the violence there. He was a refugee, and he was shot in the leg, and ran for his life and hid, and then noticed the pool of blood around him, and then realised it was his blood. He hadn't noticed in the panic that he'd been shot in the leg. So he regards himself as lucky, but like so many, he witnessed terrible shootings and people he knew gunned down in front of him.
Philip Williams in Oslo, thank you very much for your time this morning.